Robert does not know how much it means to me that he did his research. He did his research. He heard my calls. He answered my prayers. He included a cat in the beginning of the movie. People do not understand how much I needed this, how much I wanted this, how much I craved this. Every single Nosferatu movie that I've watched from 1922 all the way to 2000 Shadow of the Vampire, they had a cat in the beginning. And what did this man do? He put in a goddamn cat in the beginning. Robert cooked. Mic drop. So I'm speaking from the heart today. I don't really have any notes, but last night on Christmas Day, I saw Nosferatu 2024, and my golly, Miss Molly, was it a movie? It was so funny going to the theater because you can tell that I mean, I went like pretty much, I had a date at midnight with Nosferatu. And it was funny because the crowd before us, it was still the Sonic crowd coming in. And then the next, you could see all these you can see all the goth people. Like literally I saw people dressed in Christmas outfits, but in all black, like black Santa Claus hats. Even I had like a nice little, very Victorian era type jacket, it was really nice. I wanted to fit the vibe, right? I even think there were some people who double booked it. They Sonic, like same Dolby Theater, Sonic, and then they stayed for Nosferatu. That's hilarious. But yeah, as just some of you know, and if you watched my previous video, I have been diving into the realm of vampires, up from like reading Dracula and then watching the various adaptations of Nosferatu. So then I want to go see this movie, and let's talk about it, right? Jump right in. How can I say one thing? I don't even know where to begin, because there are certain things about this movie that I said this before, and I believe my previous Nosferatu video, that I love learning the history behind things, and I think that's what I love about franchises and when reboots and stuff come out. It's almost like they take a little bit from this recipe, take a little bit from that recipe, and then they make something entirely new, right? Like Tex-Mex or something like that. And I can tell that Robert took influences from all the movies. So Shadow of the Vampire, Nosferatu the Vampire, the original Nosferatu, and even Dracula. Like I said, first of all, he included the cat. People don't understand. There's been a cat in the beginning of every single Nosferatu movie. The man did his research. You know what I'm saying? And that's probably the thing I appreciate the most about the movie. There's so much I saw references. Like in the beginning, Ellen's character, who is supposed to represent Mina Harker from the book, she talks about, like, she says the line, "Why did you kill them, the lovely flowers?" Which is a reference from the first Nosferatu, and I don't think it was used in any other ones. But just little things like that, I literally Leo DiCaprio meme, whistling, pointing, right? But stuff like that, I remember that was, for me, the whole movie was why I was eyeballs glued, like, where are the references? Give me the crumbs. But I'm gonna preface by saying this: I am not always a huge fan of modern horror movies. And it's funny because I was watching an interview with William Dafoe and Bill Skarsgård, and someone in the comments, everyone seemed pretty excited for this movie, but someone in the comments put like, "Oh, it's just gonna be like, they're just gonna like add more sex scenes and stuff like that to just make it more adult or R-rated or whatever to this new movie. It's not gonna be that great." And then someone else replied to, "So it's gonna be awesome, right? And jump scares, whatever." And when it comes to modern horror movies, I do feel like they really crank up spookiness to 11. And I'm be honest with you, I'm a wuss. I love horror as far as like the symbolism of it all. There is something about the unknown of things that I'm curious about. For I guess some people are just like, I just don't want to know what horrors lie behind the closet, right? But me, I'm just like, I'm a little curious, and it's interesting. From when I was younger, all these things scared the crap out of me. In fact, on the drive up there, I was talking to my friend about the movie Eight-Legged Freaks. That movie terrified me, but if I watched it now, I would laugh. And it's interesting to people who I know who enjoy horror, how much it's I don't know if it's acquired taste, but I think a lot of it, when you start watching a lot of horror, I do think you get a little desensitized to some of the more graphic things about it, and it becomes less scary. It becomes, and you kind of start appreciating more the artistry of it. Don't get me wrong, I still get scared. I mean, especially in this movie, there were a lot of scenes where I'm like, don't do that, please. There was one point where there were a bit jump scares, which I hate jump scares. And I don't think anyone I know likes jump scares, and that's my issue with a lot of modern horror movies. I feel like so much of them just have jump scares. There's like older movies, I feel like not many older movies I think use jump scares a whole lot. Alien, the original, probably is the one I can think of that did, but I mean the new Alien, shoot, I remember that one was a ride too. But for me, going in this movie, when you watch horror movies, I can relate it to a lot of it like riding like a really big roller coaster where I don't necessarily want to ride this ride, but afterwards I can sit there and be like, yeah, I survived the, you get the shirt that says I survived the typhoon or whatever the roller coaster's name is. You know what I mean? And it's almost like a rite of passage, and that part of it is kind of fun aspect of it. Like when someone's like, hey, did you watch Nosferatu? Oh yeah, I did. And then some, you have a friend saying, oh, I'm not gonna see that, that's too scary for me. But like the fact that you did, it's almost like a rite of passage. So and that's another aspect of horror movies that is kind of fun. But don't get me wrong, being scared sucks, but also at the same time it's kind of exhilarating. But regardless of that, this movie, like I said, I mainly wanted to go to watch it to see what director Robert here could do with it, because there's so many different adaptations of it, and I want to see this one. And let's get into the plot. The plot is very similar to Nosferatu, in general, although I did see that he implemented some things that like were left out from the original Nosferatu that was in the book Dracula, or even he took some creative liberties to kind of expand on it a little bit. And there were a couple things I'm like, I don't know why Robert did that, but that was creepy. He did not have to do that. So for one, the movie is very similar to the older Nosferatus up until the point where maybe Nosferatu comes to town. But like the whole Thomas, going to like Transylvania or whatever to go see the Count, and then the locals there are just, they're saying, hey, you shouldn't go up there. But they really amp up the scenes of like how creepy it is around the area, the lore around that, because for the most part, like they just kind of like, hey, just don't go up there, or we'll at least give you a blessing and it will send you on your way. But in this one, they're like, it's almost like a kind of a cult of locals who do these rituals to like keep the vampires at bay, and that was a little added extra. And they have some really interesting customs. I don't know if they were like sacrificing like a virgin or something like that, but I was just like, whoa, this is weird. And they really play along with the whole kind of like sleepwalking and like almost like being awake during your dreams, which was somewhat of an aspect in the original Dracula, especially with Lucy. She was like sleepwalking in Dracula and stuff like that. Although this Lucy Anna is like the contrast in this one. She's not the one sleepwalking. It's more Mina / Ellen's character. So anyways, but so they even kept the part where Thomas loses his horse and he has to walk the rest of the way, and that was used in the Nosferatu the Vampire. So I was like, oh, I know that reference, because from what I remember in the original one, I think the carriage took him only so far before he's like, hey, you're gonna have to walk the rest of the way. But just as soon as he gets closer to that castle, I was like, this is getting a little uneasy. He's like in this dark forest, and then this carriage comes up, just empty carriage. He's like, hey, go on the carriage, and going up the carriage, there's like these wolves that chase him, which if I remember in Dracula, when Jonathan first gets to the castle, he like there are like wolves nearby that like stalk him or whatever. And I don't remember if those were like supposed to be like the 3 brides that he had, Dracula did. But like immediately this movie's creepy. I mean, even in the beginning there's like a jump scare in like the beginning of the movie. But when he meets the Count, and in the original ones, like the Count comes up and he's like, hey, come in, but the gate opens, the Count's there, and he's just like standing there menacingly. And then the Count just goes inside, and it's like, I guess I follow you. And then he's climbing up the stairs with the Count, and then the Count speaks, and his voice is just booming and deep, and like you can tell they altered his voice a little bit to literally. I mean, I saw this in Dolby. The whole theater was shaking anytime the Orlok talk. You late, Jonathan. I can't even do the voice. It was so deep and booming. And then, but they really play with your mind about not showing the Count's face fully. You don't really see the Count's face up until like maybe halfway through the movie. You're just seeing the shadow and little bits of piece of it, and it's weird because you're trying to, like, most people have an idea of what Nosferatu looks like in their brain, but you're just sitting there trying to piece together like how does he look like, because there's things you're making guesses of, and your eyes are playing tricks on you, and they really played with that, and they really drove home how not okay. So in the old ones, I would say Nosferatu was just creepy, like he was really creepy, and he was just creepy to be around. This one was just pretty terrifying, and they really expressed how terrifying was just by showing Thomas's behavior during that whole interaction, right? But in the old Nosferatu, the acting did make me giggle. There was one scene that did make me giggle, and it just reminded me of the old one, is when Thomas is cutting his bread and he cuts his thumb. It immediately zooms to Skarsgård's eyes. His pupils dilate, and he's just like, yeah, let me that blood there, buddy. And they really like kind of showed the aspects of how much power Nosferatu has, where like I guess he almost puts Thomas is in this trance and like puts him to sleep a little bit to kind of just drink his blood, because once he cuts his thumb, he's like succumbed to me, and he passes out, wakes up, and he's just got like bite marks on him, and it's just, that's really terrifying. But when we were trying to piece together what Orlok looked like, we were making guesses the whole time, but from what my friend was telling me, I believe a good part of the movie, Orlok is, I think he's speaking German, because there's one part where I believe he says du, and I'm like, du hast mich. So I think he is, and I believe that's, if he was, I'm sure that's to credit the fact that the movie is a German movie. His accent is very kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's definitely kind of like this, like you can tell he's German, because he's speaking German. He's rolling the Mars. He's rolling the Mars like crazy. Rammstein, whatever. Like, I can't do it very well right now. Something like that, right? But they really, I think, made Nosferatu a little more from the country he's from. I guess, like, what is that? Transylvania, Romania. I mean, my friend was like, this Rasputin. He was like, this man giving like Rasputin vibes or whatever. But we'll get to that in a minute. So, just the scenes though, where Thomas is in the castle. The movie, I was unsettled the whole time. I mean, there were times where I was fighting for my life in that theater, and my friend sitting next to me was like hitting his vape the whole time, just like, he was so stressed out. I was like, I'm gonna have a heart attack. I'm gonna have a heart attack at this theater. Like, oh my gosh. But like, it was also like, I don't want to look away because I don't want to miss the movie, but also like, oh, everything about that movie, because they even play with your whole mind of like, this is another modern horror movies do that I don't know how I feel about fully, but there's always just that like the screeching of like a violin or metal, just, and then they did this in the beginning of Alien and Romulus, but they just make everything quiet, and I'm like, can you not do that, please? Please don't do that. There's a scene where the Lucy character, Anna, she's like walking in this hallway, and it's all dark, and it's quiet. It's quiet for like a good minute, and it's dark. There's only a candle lit, and I'm like, I don't like it here right now. And the jump scare, quote unquote jump scare, was Ellen just comes up and like hits her on the shoulder like, you good? And I'm like, please stop. Please stop. I'm literally fighting for my life in this theater. But the only thing that I think helped me survive through the movie was the fact that I knew what most things were coming, because I've seen the old movies. If I can compare the scenes of the old movie, I was like, oh, I can kind of be prepared. So there's a scene in Nosferatu where Thomas is, he's getting his blood sucked throughout the nights, and eventually at one point he finds his coffin and he opens it. In that scene though, usually he opens the coffin and it's kind of like, run away. But in this scene, like, he opens up the coffin, and that's when you kind of fully get to see Nosferatu in the kind of like a little bit in the sunlight, and full on, the man had a mustache, and I was like, they gave Nosferatu a mustache? What? And then he's got like old decaying thinning hair, and I'm like, this is a design choice. I'm not saying I hate it, but it was very different. And my friend and I were talking about it, and I feel like they're going a more like, my friend thinks it's more of an accurate to the place and area they're at, of where he is location wise, is why they kind of made him like that. And towards the end of it, low key, it kind of made it more freakier. But Thomas is about to hit him with like a pickaxe or something, and he obviously wakes up because the sun. You can see the sun going down, the shadow of the sun going down, and we're like, no, he's gonna wake up, and then he does, and then Nosferatu is an absolute giant in this movie, and even like, especially when he puts on his coat, and he has like this nice fur kind of coat. I don't know, something about that, like it's that kind of Russian mob wife look. It looks awesome. But when Nosferatu stands up and he's towering over Jonathan, you see his pee-pee. I'm just like, they show his hungness. I was like, what? They did not have to do that. And at this point, I'm like, okay, so how much of this is like prosthetic and CGI? I don't know, because I'm pretty sure there were some parts of this movie that was CGI, but I just don't know what the rest isn't, because some of the stuff looked really real, some of it looked not so real. My eyes did not know what I was looking at. I just see this giant naked vampire with his dangling hanging out, and I was like, what the hell am I watching? And then he gets like his dogs or wolves. Apparently they're actual wolves. In the credits it says wolf, like tamers, and like the wolves are scary, because there's like scenes where he's just in the hallway, he opens the door, and he's just standing there with these giant hellhounds that chased Thomas. And I'm like, and in the original Nosferatu, like when Nosferatu goes to the new country, it shows him packing up, and he puts himself in his little carriage. But now this one, like, he gets chased. Thomas gets chased, and he jumps out the window with a rope of like sheets and stuff. But in this one, he just falls out into the river, and like, he gets woken up by like nuns, and then they do a ritual on him, and they're talking about how, like, I don't know what they're speaking in, Latin or something. I don't know what they're speaking in, but they're saying like, no, Nosferatu can't leave this place. He can't. And then Nosferatu he eventually gets on the boat. They don't really, and I think there's some things they did cut out for time, because like in the originals it does show that like Nosferatu is on raft with these guys pushing his coffin, and I think most people just know that like he gets there eventually, right? We don't need to show that. So he's in the boat, and the boat scenes are pretty creepy. I mean, the boat scenes were in the older movies, although they really like amped it up a bit more in this one. Really played with your emotions and the plague that he spreads on the boat. Though some of those boat scenes, I'm like, Lord, get me through this. Eventually Thomas does make it back, and through all this trials and tribulations, the guy who plays like the Renfield character, which Orlok is, I think this is his name in the movie. Man, he was creepy too. He was out there doing like rituals naked in his underwear. No, he wasn't in underwear. He was straight up naked, drawing pentagrams on the ground and just like, yes, master, wow. And he's biting birds' heads off, pigeons or whatever, and leaving them for offerings for Nosferatu. Anyways, we get to Nosferatu is, he's coming to town. And now the one thing I did kind of was sad about was in the original Nosferatu, he gets off the boat and he's carrying his coffin around, and it's kind of silly. He does that in the majority of the movies. He doesn't do this one. The Renfield character, Orlok or whatever, just paddles it down on a raft, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of lame. But I guess they were going more scary, so we can't be whimsical, which was, I wouldn't say it's a gripe of mine. Me personally, if I had to pick an adaptation of Nosferatu that I really enjoy, is I kind of like where he's kind of just a creep and he's a little more whimsical, and I think that's just something I kind of enjoy about older horror movies in general, is the fact that, I don't know, that maybe because of the time period they didn't want to go full on out scary, or maybe people haven't done theories enough on how to be really creepy, but older horror movies have a different type of scary that I can't really describe. The only comparison I can really think of is like, if you ever played like the first Luigi's Mansion, something about how the aesthetic of it looking, like the graphics of the GameCube, just there's something about it that gives it a nice like graininess to it that I new horror movies are just like, they're just too clean for me. I think, like, as far as they look really sharp, but in a way I think that does make it kind of scary. But like, I don't really, maybe it's the fact that I like the nostalgia of the older ones. I don't know how to describe it. I really don't. I don't have the words to tell you how I feel on that. And then also at the same time, it's hard for me to like make comparisons to older stuff when I wasn't born at that time. Maybe back then, if I was alive during like the 80s or 90s or these 70s horror films, I would have a different perspective. I'm pretty sure the OG Nosferatu in 1922, people were absolutely terrified. I mean, it's like people hearing War of the Worlds on the radio and freaking out. And so maybe modern ones are, maybe in like 10 years, 20 years, I won't find those as scary. Maybe they'll crank it up even more. I can't really tell you that. But there is something about like the way Claus's version of Nosferatu or William Dafoe's version of Nosferatu that I like it. It's almost campy. Campy is kind of the word I'm looking for. The new ones are just very like, they cut to the chase, which kind of brings me to the fact that what that kind of YouTube comment said about, adding more sex to the movies. I feel like a lot of newer ones do kind of add that kind of stuff. And I don't know if it's because like in the older movies, maybe there was like taboo things we didn't talk about and we didn't want to talk about. So they didn't really add kind of stuff like that. Although for the most part, Dracula as a book, there have always been kind of like sexual undertones, I feel like. And it's hard to get in the mindset of someone like Bram Stoker, born in like the 1800s, what he was thinking and, stuff like that. I don't know much about, I've heard theories about his life and who he is as a person, but I don't want to spread misinformation, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. And even like the 1922 or the 79 version, or even 2000s, like there's just some things that like maybe we just didn't want to address or show. Although I will just say the 79th one was the one that like, man, this is very, the undertones are very here and they're kind of unsettling. And because vampires have always been kind of, I guess, stereotyped to being kind of like seductive and sexy, kind of being luring people into their charisma. Nosferatu was never really like that. He was more just a monster. But this one kind of does add that a little bit, as Nosferatu does tempt our Ellen's character. And there's this whole kind of like subplot of her, like, I didn't fully understand it. And I'm gonna say the reason why is because sometimes people talk to the movie and I just couldn't hear them. Because, Nosferatu, when he talks, his voice is so gravelly. It's like, I don't know what you're saying. Some people spoke in an accent where I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. I'm kind of following along. But there was this kind of like subplot of Ellen's character of like, I guess at one point she succumbed to Nosferatu in her life. Like, I don't know. Maybe she had some kind of relationship with him at some point. Like I said, it was hard to tell sometimes because I was just trying not to die in that theater when I was watching it. And there's almost like this I guess, prophecy, like, because they read a book that kind of gives like this prophecy that like she has to like give up her life to like save everybody, which is kind of what happens through most of the older adaptations. Although I think in the other ones, especially like the 79 one, well, in that one it's Lucy. I think she comes up with the plan herself to do that. But like I said, they did add more adult scenes in this movie, which I don't know how I feel about that. I don't have words to really describe it, mainly because and the only reason I say that is because I just know that if I ever watch this movie again with anybody, we're all just gonna have to sit there like this. And that's like my only problem when you add like sex scenes, especially in like horror stuff. You're just kind of like, okay, I'm over here just like I'm watching death happen, and then you put this in there, I'm like, and then every, you know, it's like you can't watch this movie with your parents. Although I don't know, do anybody watch horror movies with their parents? So that's like my only like thing about it. It's just later on it's gonna be like, anyways, the next scene, right? But no, they really, I wouldn't say they really amped it up, but that was a part of it. But it did play along to the whole fact that Ellen's character feels kind of, she says this, I believe she says this in Dracula, like her kind of character, where she talks about how she feels unclean, and she even says that to one point to Thomas, so don't touch me, I'm unclean, because she has been tempted and well, in the book, she, you know, spoilers, she starts becoming a vampire, so kind of similar to that a little bit. But yeah, and then, whoa, I'm not even gonna go deep into the scene. Just go watch the movie but there are scenes where, man, she's straight up like, you know, only Nosferatu can please me. And then she's like, well, let's make him jealous, Thomas. And I'm like, whoa, what am I watching here? And then so, but those aspects, I like to think that when I'm reading the book, maybe these things actually did happen, but like in the book, it's harder to maybe express them. And so there, and even besides the more adult content of the movie in that sense, but there are parts where you see the struggle of like not being tempted by Nosferatu, not trying to like pull away from his power and his gaze. You do get to see that more, where like all the characters, like especially like Thomas and Ellen, they're trying to just resist his grasp, you know, and even times like giving into it and then pulling away, which was something that you kind of did see a little bit in the book. And I did like that they kind of expressed that in the movie very well. And that was something that I hadn't really fully seen yet in a lot of the other adaptations. I feel like in the older ones, it was like, oh, we have this vampire that's hunting us, we need to like defeat him. And this one's like, yeah, we have this vampire hunting us, but like there is a part of me that like, what if I just give in to his temptation, which is something that like, you know, some characters do actually in Dracula, which brings us to like the Lucy character in the original book. Spoilers, she becomes a vampire, she succumbs to Dracula, right? She gets poisoned by Dracula, and in this she doesn't become a vampire. But there is a scene where, okay, so Nosferatu straight up murders children, drinks their blood, and I was like, because they put kids in the movie, and I was like, okay, at no point have I ever seen kids in any of the books. I mean, technically there is a kid in Dracula, but I don't want to, you know, that's kind of towards the end, if you know how that book ends, right? But like, and I was like, I kind of have a feeling that those kids are gonna be, the only reason they're in the movie is so they can, you know, they're not gonna make it. And that scene was brutal. But so the kind of the Arthur Holmwood character and Lucy, you know, she dies, she, you know, trying to like save her kids, and there's a scene where Arthur goes to her tomb and like he opens it, and I was gonna be like, is she gonna become a vampire? Because that's kind of how it happens in the book. She doesn't, but he dies with her, and I feel like that was kind of paying homage to that mid part, because that's a big chunk of the Dracula, like literally like the middle part, majority of that book is the whole storyline of like Lucy becoming a vampire and they're trying to save her. That's a good part of the book, so they kind of pay homage to that. But that was scary because a lot of them are just denying that there is a demon they're hunting them. They're just thinking it's the plague that's killing us, and like, yeah, there's rats eating people, but who sent the rats? You know what I'm saying? And it's Nosferatu. But I will say this about the movie, is one thing I found very, you know, with, you know, you can make the argument of like adding certain things that are more quote unquote adult, make the movie more scarier or gory, more scarier or more R-rated. But you know, sometimes I feel like you don't have to, which, you know, there are times where an R-rated movie, I enjoy that R-rated movie is R-rated because maybe it's more of the themes that make it R-rated, right? Like this movie, you know, I didn't actually feel this movie was that gory, you know, as it could have been, right? I feel like a lot of the stuff that was dark because of the themes of what, you know, because a lot of the horrific, I felt things that especially Nosferatu did, he did in the shadows, and it just implied that he did them, but because it was so like heavy and creepy and just evil, this is what made it a dark movie. It's one thing I think that's an aspect of maybe older horror movies that I like, is that it's not necessarily, you know, a horror / R-rated movie because of, you know, they added more blood, they added more sex, they added X, Y, and Z. No, it's got this rating because this is dealing with like heavy, very dark, occultic, evil topics, you know, and that's like, because like, I mean, yeah, there are jump scares, but like it was just ominous is like, I guess, the word I'm looking for. But yeah, it's like, that's one thing I really did appreciate about this movie, was they really played with the shadows, and a lot of times, you know, it's not the scary thing is not what you see, it's sometimes what you don't see, you know, or it's like the anticipation of the fear. It's like that scene in The Office where Dwight is terrorizing Jim with snowballs. The true snowball is fear, you know. It's the fear that something could happen that is more unsettling. It's the fear that you don't know what Nosferatu looks like just yet, but when they finally do show him and you see that big bushy mustache, you just sit there and be like,
is he a mermaid?
Boom, got the SpongeBob reference in there. Let's go. I bet you didn't even see that one coming. Anyways, moving on. So yeah, we're just gonna go into William Dafoe. I'm just off the top of my head just trying to think about what I want to talk about this movie. So William Dafoe, he comes much later in the movie, but his character was a little mad. So, you know, in the book, I feel for the most part Van Helsing's kind of character, and in this movie it's a Dr. Albert Eberhard von Franz, you know, I'm trying to read, but the kind of Van Helsing character in the book, he's very much like, I say he's kind of level-headed, although he's very kind of doesn't tell a whole lot, but in this one, first of all, he's a cat. He is a cat person. He's like an old cat lady in this. He's got so many cats, and even at the end of the movie, he like takes care of the cat that like Thomas and Ellen had, and I was like, oh, they're so cute. But he is kind of like mad scientist a little bit in this one, and he's a little more open about like, yeah, this is a demon or something. You know, this I've encountered this. I've seen this before. I don't know how to defeat it, but I've seen it. You know, versus in the book, he's like, I know what it is. You know, the secret's in the frosting, but I'm not telling anybody. But there is a scene where this kind of did shock me, because like in the book Dracula, one mistake they keep doing is they keep leaving like Ellen's character behind, and that just kind of puts her in a place where like she could probably get, you know, hurt. And they do this one, but they do it on purpose, because well, at least William Dafoe's character does. He knows that Nosferatu is going to come and drink her blood, and that's how the ultimate sacrifice happens. Tom is like, you knew this was going to happen? He's like, we kind of had to let it happen. Sacrifices had to be made. And let's get to the final scene, I guess. So the final scene, we got Nosferatu creeping up the window. You know, there are a lot of scenes where Nosferatu straight up just being very creepy, and he really gets up in your face, and a lot of little jump scares. But the thing about it is like, yeah, it's scary, but you just want to keep looking at him because you want to figure out more and more what he looks like. But they really played into Nosferatu being like, I'm trying to seduce you, and I'm trying to get you to literally, as the title says on the poster, succumb to darkness. I felt like the 79 version kind of went a little more that route, but the Lucy character, she fought it. She was like, nope, I'm not having this. You know, I'm not succumbing to you. Get away from me. But this one, Ellen character, she was tempted. She was almost went there and would come back in and out, back and forth. And there are even scenes where I thought was kind of interesting, where William Dafoe's character kind of does like a trance with her and tries to speak to Nosferatu or try to get where he's coming from, which is something they kind of do in the Dracula book, which I was like, okay, I'm seeing some influences there. But the final scene where Ellen gives the ultimate sacrifice, she's ready to give up her life to Nosferatu to save everybody. They really amped up that scene, because in the 79 version, that scene was pretty like very creepy, and like I said, sexual undertones were there, especially in the 79 version. A little bit in Shadow of the Vampire, I don't think as much, because you're focusing more on like how they filmed it. But in this one, they really and like I said, I don't know if adding those kind of things make a movie more. I don't know if you need them or not. You know, I don't know how much they add into it. If anything, I feel like it's a symbol to be like, look, this is a thing that happens in life. You know, we don't have to hold your hand, you know, and this is an adult movie. I don't need to, like, you're watching an R-rated movie. Like, we don't need to hold your hand. We can show these things, right? So like I said, I don't know if that necessarily adds more to the movie, but, you know, maybe Robert just wanted to put titties in his movie. I don't know. I mean, who am I to judge? He's making this movie. I'm not, right? Some might say they do make him better. You know what? Apparently I just looked it up now. Nosferatu the Vampire, the 79, according to like sources, this movie was PG. That is it? There's no way. I mean, PG-13 I can see, but like, this is PG? Shadow of the Vampire is rated R, but I feel like that's rated R mainly because they show blood. Not a whole lot, but yeah, that's crazy. But like, I guess this is technically our first R-rated Nosferatu movie, so I guess that's why they amped stuff up. Because like, okay, anyways, I'm just trying to wrap my brain around on a lot of this. But so yeah, that scene where he comes, she lays herself bare for Nosferatu, and he comes down and like, I mean, he's literally naked too. And you see all his, like, they made him so grotesque. So, like, his skin is falling off. He's got, like, I mean, it looks like he has maggots inside him. He's just the foul stench of decay and death. He is the death bird, you know, the dreaded one, Nosferatu, Count Orlok, right? So she's like, drink my blood on my chest. And the man did it all for the nookie. He sucked that blood all night. And, you know, the sun comes up and you know, he's like, the sun's coming up. She's like, no, keep drinking. Keep drinking. Sun comes up and although I feel like in every Nosferatu, when the sun comes up, does the kind of like, like looks at the sun and goes, and then dies, right? This one he doesn't. He looks at the sun, and then as and very kind of poetic a little bit, as Ellen is holding him, his eye, like, this is first time in the movie, which I thought artistically was very beautiful, was throughout the movie's dark, like the palette coloring was just grays and blues and just dark movie throughout the whole movie. And then they finally just, like, this is the first time you see really, really good sunlight in the entire movie. I mean, it's cloudy most of the movie, right? And even the little bit of sun you do see, it's not that bright. But this is the first time you actually see sun. And I think it was very, like, as in terms of, like, poeticness of, in a very poetic way, it's like, oh, okay, the darkness is defeated, right? And here comes the sun, do. And then, you know, Nosferatu's eyes start bleeding, his mouth opens, and he's just, like, dying. He's almost dying. It would be cool if they made him melt. That would have been cool, but they don't. But this is a nitpick I do have. They didn't really give Nosferatu the little bug teeth. Even if they were kind of, I didn't really see it, you know, and that was kind of like, I mean, I guess his mustache kind of covers his teeth, but kind of wish I did see that a little bit. I love the bug teeth Nosferatu. That's just me. He dies on top of Ellen there, and they both just lay there dead. And then you just see the gross dead body of Nosferatu on top of this beautiful woman who sacrificed her life. And it's a shame. It's a shame. And you know, I try to sit here and figure out, like, what the significance of some of this is, because of a lot of Nosferatu, there's a lot of lore there that it's so much history to deep dive into, because you get to the point where, like, I don't know who's referencing who at this point. It's a hat on top of a hat, top of a hat. And one thing about Nosferatu was, you know, I feel like the sexual undertones is one thing that I fully try to figure out, like, what was, especially in, like, the original Bram Stoker, you know, because there are scenes where, like, even Jonathan, or, like, the Thomas character, and even Van Helsing's character, they are tempted by, like, some of the, like, Dracula's brides, you know. And I always try to figure out, like, okay, from a guy in the 1800s, what does he mean by that? And then even going to, like, how Ellen's character, she was, like, being seduced, like, the whole movie. And, like, there are parts where I'm like, you're making these noises in your dreams? What's going on here? And even, like, Thomas, like, kind of succumbing to darkness, where he's, like, has this pull a little bit, and then even, like, Van Helsing trying to not to get into that route. I always wondered, like, what do these undertones mean? Like, what are their meanings? You know, because, like, a good amount, I feel, of the Nosferatu, even Dracula's, sexualizes, like, you know, women a little bit there. And then especially how a lot of the characters just don't listen to the women. Because I remember in Dracula there was a part where, like, Mina, like, was pretty smart, but, like, don't listen to her a whole lot. And even, like, in the 79 version, Lucy was, like, figuring out, like, what was going on, and nobody listened to her. And I often wonder if that was on purpose, you know, or if they literally just did that to be, like, kind of be, like, jerks about it. There's a lot, like, I can sit here and pick at Dracula and, like, Nosferatu movies and media and books for, like, a long time. There's, like I said, one reason I really enjoyed the character and the franchise and the lore of it is there's so much there. Like, I haven't even deep dived down the Dracula movies. This is just Nosferatu, who became, like, his own icon in itself, right? But as far as this movie goes, it was a good love letter to Dracula, vampire, and Nosferatu media, which is something I really did appreciate about it. It was truly like a symphony of horror, like the music, the scoring. Robert really did his research, the cat's important thing, right? And that's what's something I can really appreciate about it. Now, I'll be honest with you, if I were to pick a favorite of my Nosferatus, I mean, I definitely love the 79 and 2000s kind of versions of it a bit more, just because I like the more whimsical kind of campiness. But I can definitely tell Robert did his research here, and if I had to pick, you know, which is my favorite Nosferatu at this point, as my favorite Nosferatu who portrayal, probably Claus's, I think. Although, like, and I think I did say this in my last Nosferatu video, I think Shadow of the Vampire is probably, like, my favorite one so far as just a story, you know. But I loved a lot of the creative choices he made, because even if you didn't like this, and I say this about a lot of movies, and it's one thing that it's a message that I try to give in a lot of my videos, is that regardless if you like something or not, whether you thought a movie was good or bad, what's something about it that you can appreciate it. I mean, there's a lot of movies I saw this year that I didn't think were great, but there are things about it I can sit there and tell you, like, here's what I did like about it, and here is, like, this person, this director had a story he wanted to tell. And it's something that a writer once told me this a long time when I was writing a D&D campaign where I said, yeah, a lot of my ideas do come from media and stuff like that. And it said, yeah, well, you may feel like you're maybe copying a story, but like sometimes there are stories that, yeah, someone has told the story, but like, can you tell it to me through your eyes? And that is even something I try to do in these videos where I'm trying to tell you the story, how I interpret it, how I saw it, the things that I liked, the things maybe I didn't like. And even in some movies that are horrible movies, what's something about it that you felt? Is there something that made you laugh? Like I said, a lot of those Nosferatu movies, the plots are just, to me, they're not the best in the world, but they made me laugh. There are things I love the artistry about it. I don't have to love everything about something to appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like spinach by itself, I hate, but like if I put it on pizza, it tastes damn good because you mix it in there with some other good stuff, right? Same thing with these movies. And so, especially with Nosferatu, as a whole, I'm able to appreciate it. And there's a lot of things in this world that like you can't really get the full picture until you either read all of it or watched all of it. I mean, it's like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I can't sit there and say, hey, what's it about? I don't know. You have to watch every single one because everyone is different. And hey, it's got vampires in it. The main character's name is Jonathan. I'm sure Rocky was like, hey, I read Dracula. Let's make Dracula. So yeah, I'm just a person who enjoys media. I enjoy the experience of going to the movies, watching stuff, and just seeing how it makes me feel, whether I like it or not. And that is kind of the beauty of especially something like Nosferatu. What did each Nosferatu make you feel? And they all made me feel something different. And because of that, I can appreciate them differently because there might be times where like, you know what? I want to watch something more artistic, modern love letter to the old stuff. I mean, it's like watching 2012 Nosferatu and like Godzilla -1. Those movies that have so much emotion and drive to them, they really hit something kind of primal in your brain versus going back to like Showa, Godzilla, 79, 2000s Nosferatu, where it's like, these are a little more campy and goofy and I kind of want to laugh today. I kind of want to like not have to think about it too much, and then there's like OG where like 1922 Nosferatu, 15 Godzilla. I like using Godzilla as an example because it's a lot of history there, but we're like these, I can see where it all started. I can see the history of this movie made, whether it's Godzilla and the horrors of like World War II, and then like Nosferatu 22, seeing how this man made this movie based off a book that he wasn't even allowed to have rights to. So how could he change that? How could he make it his own and then also birth something even new within that? I love it. And this is no longer even about Nosferatu at this point. I'm just rambling. But anyways, I've talked too long. There's probably more I could say about Nosferatu, but that's it. If you want to go see the movie, go for it. Good luck. It is confirmed to be a Christmas movie. They say the word Christmas in it. And thank you, Robert, for the cats. Juice out. Now, if you stayed behind this song, I just want to put this little tag at the end to say that I appreciate everyone who watched my videos this year. This is probably my last long form video I will make before the new year, and I don't know if I'm gonna take a break for a little bit because I have some ideas that I want to work on and they're gonna take time, but yeah, I really appreciate it. And it's been a journey. It's been a ride. I appreciate the amount of followers and comments and likes and even some of the mean ones comments I've gotten, but yeah, I appreciate it. And every now and then I'll see a comment that like, man, it makes it worth it to make. And also these I do make these, for the most part, my outlet for myself to get these thoughts out I have about these movies. And even there are times where I'm making these where like I don't have a full thought, but as I'm talking, I'm forming the thought, or even later I'll form a thought after I've already made a comment about it, and it's fun. And the last time I really addressed the public like this, I think was in my Kingdom of the Planet of Apes video, because that was a milestone for me to go through that arc of those movies. Same with watching the original 3 Nosferatus and then get to like this one, so I appreciate it. Appreciate anyone who supported me, kind of just me talking to myself. And if you like it, I hope to keep doing more. So appreciate it. Peace.